This is The Collective Voice, and you're tuning into Belonging, a conversation with young adults finding their place in communities of faith.
Welcome to the 787 podcast. I'm Jade Evans, and I'm one of your hosts.
Oh, and I'm Phil Dieke, and I'm going to play the other host today.
Yeah. And we are so excited to have with us a special group of young adults from First Presbyterian Church in Austin, Texas. We have with us Sarah.
Hello.
We have Julia with us.
Howdy.
Very Texas. We have Carla with us.
Hi.
Hey, and we have Eric with us.
Hello.
And Jamie.
Hello, hello.
We're so glad to have y'all with us. During this time of 2023, post-pandemic, a lot of churches have been finding it difficult to engage their young adults. And when I learned about First Presbyterian from Sarah, what I gathered was that there's a lot of things that are thriving about the young adults at First Presbyterian. And so that's why we have y'all here today, because we want to know a little bit more about it. And so we're going to begin with Jamie, who is going to direct us through an exercise that she does to help her spiritually and also just personally. And so, Jamie, tell us what the exercise is and how it has helped you in the past.
Yeah, so when you reached out and you're like, if anyone has any transformation rituals that have helped them that they want to share, my brain was like, I have never heard of a transformation ritual before. Let me Google that and see what's up. And what I found was very similar to something that I picked up a very simple breathing exercise, and I can't remember if it was through different choir practices or just, I'm on the TikTok, Instagram reels, but I use this when I am feeling anxious or overwhelmed, which happens a lot, but it helps me to just recenter and calm back down. And so the message of it is just very, very simple. And you're just controlling your breaths, and you're going to breathe in for 1 count and out for 1 count. And then in for 2 counts and out for 2 counts. And then see how high you can go, up or down. And so we'll try that first. So let's go to 5 just to start. So
can I before we jump in, Jamie, can I just recommend, if you are somewhere listening to this where you're driving, maybe don't close your eyes while you do it.
Oh, yeah.
But whatever, wherever you're finding yourself, as you listen to this or as you're participating in this, as much as you can participate, and if you are on the train or on the bus, whatever you're doing, just in as much as you can participate internally, externally, however much you feel like you can dive into it and do so. And obviously you get in what you put out, right? So if you can't do it in the moment, then go back to it later and try it later too.
Absolutely. And I will do this all the time. Eyes closed is helpful, but not necessary. It's about usually often when we're anxious or we're starting to get on the verge of overwhelmed and panic attack, then our breathing starts to run away with that feeling. And so the adrenaline is amping us up and making our bodies tense. So this is a conscious way to calm that back down. And so we'll just together. So get your breath out, get that out of the way. And we're going to start with a nice inhale. And we're going to go in for 1, out for 1, in 1, 2, out 1, 2, in 1, 2, 3, out 1, 2, 3, in 1, 2, 3, 4, out 1, 2, 3, 4, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice job. And so you could feel as you were breathing in for those longer counts, hopefully you felt your breath going beyond your lungs and starting to fill up your whole chest cavity down into your back. The longer you can breathe, you can feel it in other parts of your body. Your entire body needs your breath in order to function. And so just being conscious of that, feeling where your breath is moving, can really help connect us and ground us back to what we are, how we are made, and the miracle of how we're functioning. And just like, the fact that I am here right now and that I am being able to do this is great. And so we're just going to center it back for a second to what's important. And so as I was reading on what a transformational ritual is taking a thought or a intrusive element, like an intrusive thought or something that is negative, and transforming it into a positive. I realized that I also follow a group that does this with on an inhale. You can inhale something, an internal thought that you are having that is maybe a negative thought, and then you exhale a reminder for yourself of how you want to interact with the world and like a manifestation. So an example that I wrote down was on an inhale, you want to think, I am not worthless. And on an exhale, my gifts are good and I can use them. So we want to breathe in the fact that I am not worthless and breathe out the fact that my gifts are good and I can use them. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed, the first step is just recenter your breathing, and then you can take it that second. You can go to this next degree and use that. So what is overwhelmingly right now? If I am feeling overwhelmed in this moment, that nothing I'm doing feels like it's making a difference, and it would just be better if I just stopped and quit. You can breathe in that thought and think, you know what? I am not worthless. And exhale, my gifts are good and I can use them. And that's an example. Feel free to use it, tailor that, either part, whatever makes sense. And yeah.
Jamie, thank you so much. I definitely feel a lot more relaxed, a lot more stress-free, and ready to bring myself to this moment.
I feel like my shoulders even like lowered, right? Like I'm not like as tense anymore. Does anybody know who Rick Rubin is? Y'all ever heard of Rick Rubin?
Mm-mm.
No.
He's like a music producer. He was on 60 Minutes or whatever with Anderson Cooper one time, and before they started the interview, he was like, "Hey, Anderson, can we just take 3 minutes to sit in silence?" And Anderson Cooper was like live on TV, like we'll probably cut that later, but and so like we just sat for 3
That's
minutes
a long
before they
time.
right, and so they did before they even like they showed it for a few minutes in the actual like final cut or whatever, or not a few minutes, like a few seconds basically, and then Anderson at the end was like, "Oh my, I feel like this has totally changed my whole like persona coming in," and he's like, "Yeah, it's amazing what a couple minutes of just centering yourself." So Jamie, thanks for giving us that space to get centered and like releasing some tension from the day as well.
Oh yeah, glad to help.
What about others of us? Did you all feel like that was helpful to bring you into this moment?
Yeah. I feel like intentional silence is intentional time is something we don't give ourselves very much. Like 3 minutes, like intentionally sitting there sounds insane. 100%, I feel like you would just grab your phone, like probably 30 seconds in and just check nothing. So like, I mean, my therapist so many times is like, you need to do breathing exercises. And she's like, do you get a lunch break? If you don't, like, go to the bathroom and just breathe. So like, it's like that, taking that time is so important to like check in with yourself and see, okay, am I breathing well? Like, how tight does my chest feel? It's like it's just not something that we do very often. Mm-hmm. So it's always a good thing.
Yeah, and I also think about the fact that, breathing is part of taking care of ourselves. And it's hard to take care of others, serve others, do the things that we do in our churches, in our faith communities, when we haven't even given ourselves the space to breathe. So again, Jamie, that was spot on and so helpful. as we start our time together this evening. I am going to kick our conversation off, and I want us to think back and reflect a little bit about this buzzword, belonging. Everyone's talking about fostering belonging, creating spaces of belonging, and it's like, okay, but what does that even mean? Like, what does it mean when I belong? And I think one of the best ways to really know is to think back to our own personal experiences. And so I want to hear from y'all, what was one of the first times, whether it was last week or back in the 99s to the 2000s, what was one moment where you were like, I belong here? I feel like I truly, truly belong. It doesn't have to be in church. Can be anywhere. But yeah, I want to know.
Sarah said it'd be really great if it wasn't church, though, right?
I feel like I got such an aha moment, and like I don't think I've ever felt this before. And like immediately when you said that, I thought of this memory of, it was when I was studying abroad, and like I feel like, one, that's just such like a crazy experience to like go through mentally, but then I had been there probably like 6 or 7 months in Germany, and I was coming back from a trip, and I was on the train, and I finally got into view of the city that I was living in, and I was like, oh, I breathed, and I was like, I'm home. And that was such like a weird feeling for me, because I mean, you don't really think of that in the hometown you grow up in, but you're like, wow. I took a second and I was like, I am home. I do belong here. This is the place I'm meant to be in. Like, that was a pinnacle moment in that experience. And I haven't quite come to that like anywhere else. I think it was just so strange to label that place as home, even though I've moved before, because it was just going there was such an extreme. So I feel like that was like a big moment of belong.
Was it something you felt just like in your body, like just almost like a knowing that you felt safe,
Yeah.
you felt connected?
Yeah, it was like a relief. I mean, I feel like when you come home after a trip, you're like, I'm home, and you're relaxed and whatever, but to feel that in such a environment that made me uncomfortable for so long, and to finally feel opposite of that, it was like an even greater relief of like, oh wow, I am home. This is crazy. And I do feel finally like this is a familiar place for me, and I feel very comfortable.
Yeah, I just love the image of home as a place of belonging. Thinking about, some people don't have places where they can call it home, or home isn't this place where you feel safe. But I agree with you that there's something about home when you do have that experience, when you do know what it's like, that it really does register as, I'm here, I belong, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, I'm happy. I want to hear from other people too.
Carla's kind of made me think of mine. So when I moved to Austin in 2019, I was leaving a service year and then coming to Austin for seminary. And I was pretty torn on whether to go to Austin Seminary or Columbia, which is outside of Atlanta. And so I didn't really know. And I was like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision or not, but I went to Austin. And my first week living in Austin, I had basically gotten reached out to by someone to help with their youth group. And so I came, and then driving back from, it was church. It wasn't at church, but it is church affiliated. Driving back there, I drove over Mopac, this highway in Austin. I drove over Mopac and crossed over the river, and it was like like sunset, and it was really beautiful, and you like look over on your right and you just see the whole skyline of Austin. And I think I was listening to music with like my windows kind of down, and I was like, oh, I like, this is where I want to be. I chose the right place of where to move, because so much of like, I don't know, that does define a lot. And so where you move and those decisions do. And so I just had this moment of like, okay, I'm supposed to be here and I belong here, and I'm already getting into this community. I'm already starting a new thing, and just felt this like, I don't know, it's a full body feeling of feeling that belonging.
Mine is kind of similar. It's because it's on the heels of a big move. And mine is also after I moved to Austin, and it is not at the church, but church adjacent.
Yeah.
So I grew up in South Mississippi. I have an older sister, and I followed her to college, and I like never lived anywhere more than an hour and a half from my childhood home. Like my parents have never moved. Like, so that very much was like very staunch idea of home to me. And so then after I graduated college, I was like, okay, we're going to do the big girl city thing and move to a larger town, and chose Austin. And it was very lonely for the first couple of months, because I didn't remember how to make friends. As an adult, making friends is really hard. And so like,
but why do you think that is? What makes it so hard?
I think it's because by the time you reach like in school, everyone is thrown into these groups by age, and by the nature of it, you have something in common, which is the class you're in. And then if you're in an activity or a sport, you have something in common with those people. So you have something to rally around. And just by nature of spending time with people who are going through similar life stage as you through school as you go, or even just as a job, like with your coworkers, you have naturally things that you can gather around and start to build those relationships. It gives you an easy icebreaker to make friends. But I moved to Austin, and all of the friends that I had built up over the past 12 years, I suddenly had like, okay, it's time to meet your coworkers and hopefully they can be your friends. And it was very overwhelming for me. Also because I'm a middle child, so I have a younger brother and an older sister. And so I always had built-in friends with them as well. So moving to Austin, I was just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go home after work. I don't have any activities to do because I was a very busy kid growing up. But I wound up at First Pres for a worship service, which was Easter. Actually, was my first ever worship service, a glorious, glorious one to start. And then when I came back the following week, I got invited by another young adult at the church to a brunch, young adults gathering brunch. And so I was nervous because I hadn't really met anybody yet. I was like, well, I'll give this a shot and try. And you walking into as the new person in a group can be overwhelming as well. And it was a big group. It was like 14 people. And so I was like, I'm just going to sit at this table, and I'll sit kind of toward the corner, and I'll just observe and be part of that. But everyone was friendly and engaging, and something really silly happened at the table next to us, like of a grouping of older folks. And like basically the older folks offered us candy out of their pockets. And so it just became like a little weird like inside joke that all of a sudden we all had. And just like that's
Wait,
so
I'm sorry.
strange.
Can we...
I wasn't sure if I would need to go into that more, but
Yeah, I feel like you can't casually talk about a young adult brunch and then old people trying to give candy. There's also a van parked outside that was like,
they were
puppies.
sweet. They were sweet. Look, I'm a trusting person, but I can smell when something's fishy. Okay, these were chill old people, but they were like basically like, "Oh, you youngins, you remind us of our grandchildren. Here, have a sweet," and like offered. And one of the guys was like, "Sure, I'll take a candy." And so it was like a little wrapped candy, like the kind that grandparents have in bowls in their house, but
like factory sealed. We're sure that they were.
I don't remember. There might have been a risk factor to it.
I can attest this happens all the time. Like
What?
When I worked at a nursing home, that was like the first thing people told me is like they will offer you candy, don't eat it. Just
Word to
take
the wise.
it, throw it away.
I feel like in this instance, the guy who received the candy did eat it, which could have been part of why we just felt like a bond. All of a sudden, is like we've been through this trial. You could have died, but it's just like that experience and going into that expecting to be kind of like, well, I'll just be kind of new and just kind of on the outskirts, but then being welcomed in so quickly made me feel like, hey, yeah, I can do this. Like these all could grow into fantastic relationships, which they did, and just not feeling like I should have stood on the outskirts, but feeling rather that it was okay that I had a seat, a literal seat at the table, to be welcomed in and to be part of the group.
That's a good story. I love that.
Candy and all.
Candy and all. Like, that's fantastic. That's so good.
And I love that, you came to the service, and the fact that someone invited you, like they saw you, they invited you into deeper relationship. And isn't that all we want? Like to be seen and invited into deeper relationship with others who, enjoy our company. So thank you for sharing that story.
And how quickly you can bond over something so silly, and how a shared experience like something like that can lead to something that just breaks down those barriers and those walls of. I mean, again, this is the power of a shared experience in such a way, right? Is that it cuts all that out of the way.
And I think that's really what did it, with just like laughing over that. There's there's something very infectious and vulnerable about laughter that just, I think, really cemented that. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I can do this. I can be in this city kind of by myself and we can make this work. And I've been here for almost 8 years.
Mm-hmm. So their invitation is what kind of reassured you that, okay, I can stay here. There's people who have embraced me here. That's wonderful. Jamie
said the V word too, vulnerability, right? So I would love to press into that a little bit too, because I feel like that's a big part of belonging. So I don't know if anybody else has stories around what it took in a sense of vulnerability to get into belonging. We're just gonna dive right in, folks. Like what is the shared experience it took of being vulnerable to get in that space of belonging?
I feel like with friendships, I moved here from Phoenix with no friends, and I just in general, yes, as an adult, making friends is very hard. And I feel like as a kid, if you were to say, I want to be your friend, let's be friends, you kind of came off as a weirdo, and people are like, oh, she's being really desperate right now, and this is awkward. I don't know if I want to be your friend. So I have had to say that to people as an adult of my intention here is I want to be friends, and I have to be very straightforward and kind of awkwardly so very vulnerable, put myself out there and be like, I like you, let's be friends. And that's a huge vulnerability, and to walk into any space and not know someone is also very vulnerable because you have no comforts there. So I mean, to walk into a church, to walk into whatever your job, it's you're very exposed to a lot of new eyes. So that's hard to do.
I think I'm trying to think. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to think, because I've somehow ended up in Bible study with people who are young parents or parents of younger kids, and I don't have any kids, so there's not much that would make us hang out normally, but somehow the atmosphere there, and when I started going to First Pres, and Julia was with me, we went at the same time. I guess they had just kicked off something where there were new Bible studies, or new like wonder hour is what it's called, where it's like an hour in between our church services where you can go to different Bible studies. And I think we just wandered in to the one that was less formal and less like there's like one where one person talks and everyone else sits, and then they respond, and then they like go back and forth a little bit, and then the one person keeps talking. And then there's another one where everyone sits in a circle and just sort of chats, and there's like a general guiding question that leads the discussion, and of course we get sidetracked on something else, and I end up thinking about things that I really wouldn't think of normally, like what does it mean to be a good parent? Like I haven't even thought of that, because I think I just put it out of my mind with where I am in my life now. And I think I learned so much from these people who just come in, sit down, and chat without really like. I don't feel like there's judgment in that group. I feel like I could go in there and just be myself and be appreciated for being there, and I really appreciate and enjoy that time.
I think something too, I was actually going to speak on that group as well, is I appreciate, we just showed up one day, but they were authentic and I would say vulnerable from day one. Just like they invited us into their lives, which made us feel like they wanted us there. And that's what we were talking about, with a sense of belonging and an invitation. And someone kind of has to always start that. Someone has to invite another person in. And I think, yeah, that group in particular just invited us in, even though we are not in the same stage of life at all. And we can just learn so much from them. It's just an unexpected blessing in a way. And yeah, it makes me want to be that for someone and also open up more to others.
What is this group? I'm like, ooh, I'm interested in this group. So what's this group called? So is it a Bible study? Is it, yeah, like what would y'all, or what is the group called from the church?
Yeah, the group is called like the Fill Your Cup class, and it is just a class that you start with a quote. It could be a scripture quote. It could be from like Winnie the Pooh. We've had so many random different quotes, and you just kind of, that's a prompt, and there's some like 2 questions just to like get you talking about things. Yeah, so it's a very like abstract class, but it's very fun and informal. Yeah.
I love it. There's something, there's something good about like, yes, we love the Sunday mornings. Yes, we love the pomp and the, the preached word. But, there's also something just holy about sitting, talking to each other, laughing, like letting the conversation go where it goes. Whether that is, a debate that's fun, or even like someone really being honest and real, like, this is what's going on in my life. And so this is such a beautiful example of creating space for belonging. That's going on at First Prep.
Can I jump in on that too, Jade? And just like, I would love to know, because y'all are talking about a space specifically that is kind of geared toward younger folk, I assume, right? If they have young kids, they're probably kind of younger, your age demographic generally, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
I think it's
not
open
like,
to anyone.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Well, that's even better. Cool. Because that was kind of my question, was like, are you finding spaces where you find belonging and you find the opportunity to kind of move into a new space that is just kind of like age specific, or are you finding opportunities to be in inter or multi-generational spaces where, whether people are giving you candy or not, whatever the case may be, like, but you're finding like a good sense of belonging I guess the question is it like really more of kind of an age specific thing, or is it a life stage specific thing, or is it an experience kind of specific thing, or is it just like, I don't know, we just showed up and they just happen to be the people that are there kind of thing?
Yeah. So I think it's geared towards anybody, any age group. It just so happened to be predominantly filled with like parents of young kids. But we've had like all the age groups, and I think it's really interesting to hear what every generation has to say. And as someone who had like graduated college kind of recently in the past couple of years, that was just a heavily that was just 18-year-olds to like 24-year-olds, and that's the demographic I was used to. So this was just an interesting transition, and I feel like I've gained like just different perspective from having all age groups speak on their experiences.
I also, just to add to that, I think I feel really comfortable that the class is so unstructured, because, and it also has like a little guiding, like maybe 5 sentences of like guiding rules, not rules, but they're rules, that are called, that are, and one of them is like, it's okay to not share. And I think that the people in that room, whoever they are, it always changes every week because people are teaching or people are out of town. And, but whoever's in that room knows that they're appreciated just for being there. And they don't have to say anything. And the people will appreciate them and their presence just as much as yeah.
What a great like definition of belonging, right? Just appreciation for presence. I love that.
Right. And I think that was something that drew me to First Pres, if I can get back to our first question. Because we did join the church relatively recently. And I had been going to different churches, and I think there were it was sort of this feeling of I could hang out here and not talk to anyone and feel like I can just stay in this space. And I wouldn't feel like, oh, I need to go, or oh, I need to like do something or talk to someone. I could just hang out and that would be fine. I could talk to someone, that would be fine too. But if anything else, I think that comfort of just like, oh, this is a space where I can relax and rest and recharge, and I think that was what I was looking for in a spiritual home. So
That's
really grateful to find it.
And you're also an elder, right?
No. Julia's
You're a
an elder.
deacon.
I'm a deacon, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're a deacon. So did your like decision to become a deacon, like did it come after all these sort of feelings of rest and like how did you decide to become a deacon?
Yeah, I think I had been at a church that was kind of weird about like, oh, you have to be here for like a little bit and then you can do stuff. And I felt ready to serve, do stuff. And I had grown up, I had been going to a Presbyterian church since middle school and got the opportunity to be a youth elder. And I think that really taught me a lot about what it means to serve, and all the work that goes on behind the scenes kind of gave me some view into that. And I think when I came to First Pres and saw the people, I think God was speaking to me and saying like, hey, I want you to try to work with people. I don't think that I'm a very like people-oriented person. That's not how I would describe myself. But I think being a deacon and being focused on people is something that is much or it was like pushing out of my comfort zone, but I felt like First Pres was a place that I could try that, and I don't have to be perfect at. So I think it was, well, it's been a learning experience so far. But it's been a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Okay, for people who aren't familiar, can you clarify too, like what the difference between a deacon and an elder is in the Presbyterian Church, just so
Right.
others can know what the role of leadership that you have delved into.
Right. So, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. There's
Help us.
the elders meet and run sort of church activities, and the deacons are focused more on the members or the people. So specifically, my deacon team, we have deacon teams that focus on different aspects, like pastoral care, or my team is the hands-on service, and there's a team that deals with the people who use our building during the week. But my hands-on service team looks to make opportunities for our members to serve the community and engage in the community around us. Yeah.
That was
Should
right.
I
That was
go
right.
on? Oh, thanks.
Actually, I remember when Sarah, we met, and you brought up an article from, I believe it was Christianity Today, in this conversation. Actually, Phil and I had recently read the same article, but the article was talking about the fact that young adults want to do more. They just want to be asked to do more in their faith communities. And, you know, when you were talking, Eric, that's exactly what I thought about. The fact that there's this, you know, this overarching theory that young people are disengaged, or just, you know, we just want to come into the back, sit in the back pew, and just, you know, leave when, you know, when it's over. But that's not always the case. And you all are, Eric, you're a deacon. There's two elders here. There's a pastor here, and there's a youth sponsor, and you all are so engaged. And I think there's something about belonging when it comes to really being fully engaged as well. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about how your role that you get to play at the church gives you that sense of belonging as well.
I kind of want to say, I don't want to be like in a realistic light, but my husband and I, we joined the church during COVID. Like, it was 2020. I think it was like March. We started fist bumping instead of like shaking hands to pass the peace on that Sunday. So it was like early days COVID, and everything shut down. So church was a very different experience for us starting out. Like, we didn't come very often, and by come I mean like stream very often, because that almost became more difficult than like anything to like try to accommodate that and be present while not being present. And then once church started back up, it was like, okay, we're kind of tiptoeing around how people can like still participate or like come back to participate. So our journey of being involved in the church was kind of like we had to fight for it a bit. So my husband and I are both youth sponsors, and I'm a member of the choir. I just started a year ago in the choir, and we've done youth for probably a year and a half now. But those are spaces we had to be like, okay, we are going to do this. We are going to be involved in this. I feel like we've tried to join other like young adult spaces, but it's kind of been difficult. And then Bible studies are sometimes at like weird times, like noon on a Wednesday. And I'm like, I don't know how you're supposed to make that with like a 9-to-5 job, but like it can definitely be difficult to like be engaged as like a young person with friends. And like I'm always like, okay, every Wednesday I have choir, like, and they're like, oh, you're in the choir, like that's such a big deal. And it's like it is a commitment for like someone, you know, of a certain age. And like Sunday nights aren't really a sacrifice for me, and honestly I love doing youth stuff, but it's definitely like for someone of, I feel like, our age range, it's not always realistic in a way, and it's something you have to like dedicate yourself to. But I mean, I love working with youth. Like they're so funny, and it's something I enjoy doing. So it's not really like a sacrifice in a way, but it's a space that I had to find for sure.
Yeah. What can you say more about what it means to be a youth sponsor?
Um, it's changed.
Yeah.
Thank God we have Sarah. We
Indeed. Thanks be to God for Sarah.
Thanks be to God.
let's all pray for Sarah. We started. My husband and I actually started like in another time of transition for youth. Our old youth pastor was leaving. She had been there for like 14 years. Don't fact check me. I don't know. But a long time. So she was like a very like trusted and respected member of the community. And so we were all very scared about what was going to happen to youth group and like how that was going to go. Luckily, we had another youth sponsor who had been doing it for like 9 years. And he was like, I got this. Like, I know the games and I know the kids. And I was like, great. So for a few months, we kind of just got together on Sunday evenings and just played games and like kind of talked about God. But since Sarah stepped in the role, we like actually do Bible studies, and I feel like we're a lot more like personal with the kids. I feel like my role as a youth sponsor is really not very major. It's like another set of eyes in a way. I try not to be too parental, but there are times where I'm like, I know you've had 18 cookies and like you gotta stop. Like it's time to stop. But it's not, I don't really take it very seriously. But for me, youth group was like such a safe space, and like I always thought the youth sponsor was really cool at my church. So I just want to be the cool youth sponsor.
That's beautiful. Like continuing the legacy of youth sponsors. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's an important role, even though to you, you're like, I don't know if I'm contributing so much by being here, other than we need 3 adults and I am one of the 3 that is present right now, for the ratio of adult to child being the right ratio. But like the fact that you are there as a role model, like age, it's like you're not a parent age for these kids, so they are seeing you as someone to look up to and someone just to be there and just to be present with, making them feel like they can be seen, making them feel like, oh hey, it's cool to look up to other adults and to feel respected and what am I trying to say? Like, feel like I matter to other adults than just my parents or just my teachers. So, like, starting to, like, we a couple of us mentioned the intergenerational aspects of the wisdom that you gain and just the perspective that you gain from being with people that are not at the exact same life stage as you. Like, Carla, you are able to provide that for those kids, even if it's just playing dodgeball with them in the yard. Like that, having that interaction is building upon what's going to help them to grow.
Yeah, and giving them a sense of belonging too, right? And in some ways, like, it's a paying forward of that belonging aspect.
Yeah, I feel like with I mean, again, age of COVID, age of Zoom, like it was hard to connect in a lot of ways for these kids. So like having relationships beyond school and like connecting with people at church, like I mean, that's what kept me going throughout high school is like accountability of like, oh, I know this person will be here. Like, I want to see these friends. I want to see these people. And like,
Yeah.
knowing that you matter, I mean, for any kids is so important because mental health is real. And like, when you go through that list of like, do people care? It's like, yes, people do care. And like, I will ask about whatever your stuff and I'll ask about your football game and whatever. Like, I try to remember things because for me, that's what makes like me feel seen in a space, And these kids need that a lot.
Yeah, and they're not much different from us. Like, Carla, who is asking about your football games at the church?
Well,
What's your season record right now, Carla?
100 no. I don't know football.
Yes.
I feel like that has been the key to church really lately is like finding those people. And like I said, like honestly, it made me like really happy that you said you found a space, Eric, because like I really want that. It's been hard to do, like, because I think it was just when we started and like what groups we went into, like finding, there are so many people of our age range in our church, and it's hard to like get them all together. Like we've tried so many times, I feel like, and I know there are groups. It's just we're not like currently in them.
Yeah.
And so like we found niche, like random people, it seems like we found Sarah through youth, and we found like I have choir people that I talk to, but they're like 85, and it's
yeah, everyone else in our choir. Me and Carla come in and we're like, hey, how's it going? And we like have 2 seconds to chat. And then it's like, okay, I'm in a different section of the choir than Carla, so by nature we have to sit far apart from each other. And then like every so often I'm like, you're still there. We're
yeah, it's honestly like a group of parents when you go in, or your grandparents. They're like, oh, you're so young. It's so funny. But
I love, Carla, what you're saying about like you're kind of getting this like again, you're getting to help others with belonging from the youth perspective, and kind of like, if you will, like pour out of those people and like go and be in choir where you have like the other, like like there's just so few spaces in the world now where you have that opportunity to be in the proximity of people from every walk of life at that point, right? And like I feel like church is still one of those few spaces, and so I'm just super grateful to hear you tell those stories and like be the example of that. It's really encouraging.
Yeah, they're a fun group. I heavily encourage it. I try to get all the young people to join choir. I'd love more young people, but I've always felt connected to like older people too. So I love that space. Like I have gone out and had drinks with these ladies. Like I am all in. They're wonderful.
And it probably means so much to them too. Like they probably really enjoy like being around you. It probably reminds them of back in the day. And our elders, they well, not you all elders, but like the elders, those who are 80 plus, 70 plus, like they want to be around us. They do. So and we want to, and what you're saying, Carla, like we want to be around them. And that's wonderful. And Jamie, you said you're in the choir as well, and I know you're also an elder of the session. So I wanted to hear from you a little bit about what belonging has looked like for you as you kind of move through the space of the church and help in different ways.
Yeah. So at this point, I've been at First Presbyterian about 7 years, and so that started out with like a member of the, like, going to the young adult events and like game nights and things like that. Back when life was simpler, we were all younger at that point and we didn't have as many obligations, so it was easier to schedule stuff together. But that fast group of friends from the brunch table that one day, and then I got invited into the choir by the choir director, who basically called me up. He was like, "Hey, I heard that you are a decent singer in the congregation, so choir practices are on Wednesdays. They're from 7 to 9. Please be there." Like, so yeah, sure. I'd never been in an organized choir, and so, but I had been in lots of group activities structured around like a performance type goal. So, like dance and different things growing up. So that was actually really perfect for me, like filling that niche of getting to make music in a larger group setting, because when your voice as one can contribute to that part of that whole, and then you're like, as a unit, the choir, you're like, you know that you are part of that and you're part of something literally larger than yourself and you're contributing to the service in a meaningful way, is really nice. So that, like, your voice, like, finding its spot in the middle of the many, there's a sense of belonging there for that. And then from there, I just, because I was at the church for choir practice and I started to get involved with the folks who are older, and so the church members that are in choir, a lot of those older folks were deacons or elders, or they're on the pastoral nominating committee and the leadership nominating committee. So they started to be like, "Hey, Jamie, do you think you want to be on stewardship committee?" And I was like, "I've never been a part of that, but I'll give it a shot." And then I wound up on the stewardship team for 3 years. And just kind of what you were saying, Eric, about going in and not really knowing what to expect, but being very welcomed in, and people who are grateful for your presence. I definitely felt that in that committee, because I was like, I don't understand fully what I am getting myself into, but I'm willing to be open and give it a shot. And then everyone else saying like, "Hey, just because you've never been on a committee like this before does not mean that your opinions and your perspectives are not valid for what we're trying to accomplish. Like, you are representing a specific, like, you're representing a voice within this congregation that is worthwhile and worth listening to. And so what you're contributing is important as part of this team." And I felt that on the stewardship committee, which then led to me being a deacon for 3 years. And then I was going to re-up my deacon nomination, my deacon term, excuse me. And there wound up being a situation where a hole opened up on the elders team of session, and that needed to be filled. And there was someone else who was willing to be a deacon, but not an elder. And so they said, "Hey, Jamie, by any chance, would you be willing to be an elder instead?" And again, I was like, I don't really know what that entails, but sure. Showed up and for like orientation, had some brief orientation, but it's again a group of people who care very much about the church, and just are invested in making it a place that is welcoming and a place that we are bringing the best that we can be, so that others feel like they can belong here. So Julia is an elder now as well. And so your term started this past year. Is that right, Julia?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you probably had a similar experience when you were joining in.
Yeah, I think in terms of like the belongingness, what was very nice is people really reached out to me and Eric too for like us getting involved in some of the leadership stuff, which just felt like an honor that the church wanted us, even though we hadn't been there for or we had only been there about like 6 months. But we were already involved, and yeah, I guess it was just always on my heart to like serve as much as you can. I think my family always overdid it, probably to a fault with church, but I also think you kind of get out what you put in a bit. And so I've always just been very into whatever I do. And so me and Eric volunteer with the kids for Sunday school a lot. but it was just an interesting invitation to be an elder, I guess. And it was something I had never done also, but just the fact that they wanted me there. And I was like, I don't know what it means to run a church or like what a church budget looks like. Like that's not in my wheelhouse, but I think I get the opportunity to learn a lot, and it's a 3-year long commitment. So I think I get to learn, and I get to be on a ministry team with Sarah for the children and youth. So we get to plan all the like big events and all the family events at church, and I get to learn a lot from her and everyone who's run everything. It's just a huge learning experience for me. I feel like the church is really pouring into me, and I hope to like serve and give back as much as I can.
I feel like this is such a big deal because there's one thing about belonging and like feeling like it's a welcoming space or a safe space. I already forgot, Eric, what you said earlier that was a good definition of it. Like just valuing the presence, right? Like that's
Right.
one piece of it. But then kind of there's this next step of belonging where it's like, oh, we see you and we are grateful for your presence here, but like we're now going to entrust you with, I'm going to say the word, with power, right? Like we trust you to have power in this space, and we're going to even like seed power to you in the midst of this. Because I know way too many churches that just it's the older folk who love to hold on to that power, right? Like, and I'm just super encouraged to hear y'all telling this story of like being seen, being welcomed, like feeling that sense of belonging, and then also being entrusted to like take leadership roles in that. Like that's remarkable. So Sarah, I know you're the representing staff person in the midst of this, so props to you. I know you made every one of those decisions. Very well done.
Yeah, it's cool to have like so many young adults a part of so many decisions, and that like not only are you being you're not just seen as a young adult at the church, you're wanted and you're needed. Like everyone is needed at like in all the different roles that everybody fills. Like it is not just a like, oh wow, cool, we have younger people here. Like it's a different vibe at the church that feels very like, oh great, you're here, like you are wanted and you're needed, and like in any way that you show up, you are needed. And so it's a cool atmosphere for sure.
That's so important too, because the church that I grew up in, it ended up dying, which like if you've ever been a part of a dying church, it's not fun. But like I know it's really sad. It's really sad.
I don't mean to make light of that because it is sad. You're right.
No, but it was like a slow, painful death. They really drew it out. It was it was a lot. But I feel like there are many factors in that, but a part of it is like opening up that space to new people. And like it can get so political. I mean, it's, church is kind of a political system, but in the same way, you can elect new people very often and as often as you like. And I feel like the way that we do it at our church is like it's encouraging of a lot of different opinions, and like there's always new people. And honestly, I'm surprised sometimes when I hear, oh, you're like on leadership. That's awesome. Like it's very diverse group, and it's not just like the people who have been here for 57 years and we've done it this way since the beginning. It's like, okay, but we can evolve because church is evolving like very much right now. So that's so important to have different perspectives.
Yeah, we can evolve and we can collaborate across generations. Like, so that is so powerful. I agree with Phil. Like this is just props to First Pres. And I also want to hear from Sarah, who's pastor of faith formation, and so you have a different lens about all these matters. And so I wonder, from your experience, what has it been like for you to find that sense of belonging as a pastor?
Yeah, I don't know, because it's interesting because I started at the church not ordained, and so I started as a director of children, youth, and families, and also as like a young person. Like I started, like I have like a partner and stuff, and we're engaged, but I I didn't really want him to come with me in the beginning because I wanted to like establish my own like self at the church, and be like, okay, I am like eventually going to be a pastor here, like waiting around for ordination stuff to happen. But it was, but yeah, it's interesting. And I feel like it's interesting navigate like being a young adult at the church. And like, I really haven't had a lot of like weird ageism or anything at the church. Like it hasn't felt, I think being in is such like, in such a big, I don't know, established denomination, like it is seen whenever people are ordained, it is seen as like, okay, people went through a lot for this. It's not just like, oh, who's this young person coming in? Like people understand that I had to go through a lot of different things to be in this spot. So I have like felt a lot of respect coming into that. And yeah, I think it's seen as, I think because like all of us are seen as people who are not just young people, like we are seen as people with purpose at the church. It isn't, yeah, we're seen as more than just like a young face or a young personality, I guess, or like, and also just as like a youth sponsor. Like Carla's a youth sponsor at the last church I was at. A lot of the younger people were youth sponsors, and it is seemingly, it's less power, but it's also more power, I feel like, in a lot of way, because it is like for me to trust like Carla and other sponsors to be like, all right, you guys are going to do this small group. I'm like, hope it's going well. Like, hope you're not saying anything super problematic to children. Like it is a super like
no pressure,
trusting.
no pressure.
Yeah.
It might have happened once or twice.
Yeah. It's okay. Healing happens.
So far, no one's like called, you know.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't heard anything. But yeah, it's an interesting like place, and it's funny to be a young adult at the church, but also be on staff. It's still something I think I'm trying to figure out, especially because young adults, like talking to Phil and Jade, because I was more involved in the 787 collective, like young adults aren't under my like purview of my job, and yet I interact with young adults all the time, just because those are the people who are sponsors, those are the people who are Wonder Hour teachers. Our young adults are really regular attenders of church, and so that is who I'm around a lot. And so it is, and like naturally because I am a young adult too, but even like most of our young adults like don't have kids. Like most people are upper 30s, 40s, 50s who have children that I interact with a lot. So it's just different. Yeah, it's not really in my like job description to be doing young adult ministry, but in a sense it all is ministry. And like you, like being a teacher, being a sponsor, doing all of these things is you like being involved in the ministry. And so it all is a part of that. And it's interesting, like hearing Julia say like, yeah, this church is feeding me, especially because she's like the elder for my like committee that I'm with. I was like, okay, thank God, because she does do a lot. And so it's nice to hear that she also feels like the church is filling her up when I'm like, you do a lot too, Julia. So it's nice to hear. I don't know. It's good that it goes that same way. And I think it's simultaneously filling your cup and letting it pour out as well at the same time.
I think we can end with that. I mean, you touched on so many things, but the overwhelming sense that I get is that you all are safe and trusted to serve others, love God, and do the work that you all enjoy doing. So I am so happy for y'all and excited that other people can hear more about this. Our listeners who are watching, and they can get a sense of what young folk are up to in our neck of the woods in Austin, Texas. And so I am going to give y'all a second to think about something that you want to share, or just few words that you would give to those who are listening. So I'll give you like 2 minutes that we can edit out later, I think. Right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, why not? We'll have a breathing. We'll just be breathing for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Everyone everyone practice your intentional breathing.
Right.
If you're listening, just we'll give you that space.
Well, we talked a lot about belonging, what it means to belong, and it sounds like First Presbyterian Church in Austin, Texas has figured it out for a lot of the young folk who are there. And so thank you all for joining us, Phil and I. We appreciate y'all joining us. And for those who are listening, the young adults at First Pres have a message for you.
I would say it's hard to make friends as a young adult because it takes a lot more intention, and it takes a lot of intentionality to communicate with people and to find time in busy schedules. And so it's really nice to find community that maybe doesn't look like your age group, or it doesn't look like the people that you work with or that you see every week. But it's really nice to have a place that you can go and just be yourself. And it's nice to be able to see people all in the same place, and that you have the same set of values and the same level of want of community, and want to serve God, and want to serve in the way that you want to serve it.
I'd like to say that if you're feeling uncomfortable, be trusting enough to take that first step, even if it seems a little scary, because a lot of growth can happen out of their discomfort. And if you don't try, you'll never know how far you could go. So everyone that is part of something that looks interesting had to join at some point. And so don't be afraid to be vulnerable, like Eric mentioned, and just give it a try. And then you'll never know where it could take you.
I would say it can be hard to be in our age group as a church member, and maybe those spaces aren't always curated for you, but pushing your way through and finding that space and making that space can be so important. As adults, it's hard to have extracurriculars, and you don't always get communities outside of work. So creating that space of church and community is so important. And it honestly can change your entire perspective on life.
Yeah.
Not to be mega, but
I think advice that I have for anyone listening is just that nothing replaces, I think, the virtual experience like church, or church is just where it's at. I think finding a community of people, and that is just so much better than what you can experience online. Of course, if you can't come, that is totally okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think people really do impact your life. And so my hope is that you can be with people in whatever capacity you can, and that you deserve to feel like you belong. If a church makes you feel weird for whoever you are or what you've been through, don't go. Or just do what's good. Do what's best for you. I really do think. And yeah, God loves you.
And I'd say, kind of tying back to what Jamie said at the beginning, just take time to appreciate where you are and breathe and relax. I think looking around really does help me at least appreciate where I am. And I think that mindset is a good one to live life with.
Thank y'all. And thanks to all of our listeners for watching and joining us on the 787 podcast. That's all we got.
If you're in Austin and looking for a place to belong, I think you found an opportunity here, right? What is it? Fill up your cup. What was that called? There's all kinds of opportunities here. Choir, join the choir.
If you can sing.
All kinds of space for belonging.
Yeah, come hit us up. We'll find the spot.
I love it. Yeah.
Oh, it's there.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Blessings to y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Collective Voice,
the premier podcast of the 787 Collective.
Click the link in our show notes to connect with us and learn how you can be the lucky recipient of free 787 Collective swag.
And don't forget, when you rate and review us, you're tricking the algorithm for the common good.